PEACONTE back on the air. Brian Peacock and Jason Aponte breaking down the San Francisco 49ers. OTAs are in session. Kyle Shanahan on a number of subjects and what really matters right now from these OTAs. What's happening in the spring as we head toward the 2025 season on this episode, OTBP. Brian Peacock and Jason Aponte at BD Peacock at Jason Aponte 2103. Jason, man, what's up? I haven't talked to you. We haven't even talked since the draft. I've been getting away from some of these extra streams aside from all the other podcasts I'm already doing, by the way. Tune in, Locked On 49ers, the Peacock and Williamson NFL show daily. Tune in to Jason Aponte's channel. He's doing a number of things in a number of places, as we always do. And this one kind of fell to the wayside a little bit during the springtime, which is kind of unfortunate. So it's good to chat with you, Jason. And then I'm pumped to hear what your takes are now post-draft on these 49ers as we hear Kyle Shanahan speak on this team getting closer to training camp. And what are we, phase 2? Are we officially in phase 2?
Yeah,
the offseason. Sometimes a phase is just like a day, and like they get together and they're like, "Hey, what's up, guys? All right, that was phase 1. Cool. Let's break and let's go back for phase 2." So OTAs not mandatory. Some people there, some people not. What are your biggest takeaways from Kyle Shanahan's press conference, as it were, today from OTAs?
Well, if you were taking betting, I guess odds on who was going to be in the best shape, I took minus 700 on it being Christian McCaffrey.
We should have done a podcast about that 2 months ago, and then we could have just uploaded it and been like, hey, Christian McCaffrey, best shape of his life.
Last year, it's funny, the prediction that I had was Deebo Samuel, and it was Deebo Samuel. That was just and again, when I say who's going to declare themselves in the best shape of their life, it's not who's in the best shape of their life, it's who's going to say, right? Who's going to be the one? And that's what I meant. Like, again, people are just like, well, why wouldn't Christian McCaffrey? I'm like, it's not about who's actually in the best shape of his life, because spoiler alert, it might be Jacob Cowing. And it's just who is going to declare themselves in the best shape of their life. And it had to be Christian McCaffrey. And that's, when I heard Kyle Shanahan say that, I was like, oh, shocker.
Yeah. Maybe the only story that was less shocking than that from the NFL this offseason is that Joey Bosa is already dinged up with the Buffalo Bills. Probably would not have been smart money for the San Francisco 49ers to bring him in. You got the rookie Mykel Williams playing that big end role now opposite Joey's brother Nick Bosa for the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously not a lot of pads on at OTA, so not a lot of takeaways there from some of the big defensive linemen and some of those things. But if I'm correct in sensing this from your voice, Jason, a little excited about a new beefier version of Jacob Cowing, maybe?
Yes, absolutely. And you know what's funny is the unfortunate news of Ricky Pearsall's hamstring injury now is unlocking the door, right? So you've got Ricky Pearsall, who's going to not be back until camp. Jacob Cowing, by all accounts, is in the best shape of his life, is looking better. His trainer, if you check out Kyle Posey's tweet, declared that he's in a different space and he's ready to make noise. Demarcus Robinson is going to be suspended. Brandon Ayuk is likely going to miss the first 4 weeks. If there was ever a door, this is it, and this is your spot. And this is why I continue to pound the table for them to bring in more wide receivers. Well, this guy and this guy's ahead of them. The best laid plans of mice and men, because guys are going to get hurt. Guys are going to be dinged up. What's wrong with adding really good football players? I'll never understand the pushback on that idea. I always wanted them to sign Elijah Moore for a year for $4 million, which the Buffalo Bills did. And, now, do the 49ers even explore Amari Cooper or a Keenan Allen, right? Like, I don't know, but this is the reason that you continue to stockpile your depth and you continue to add players, is for reasons, unfortunately, that we heard today, that, Ricky Pearsall is going to miss the rest of the phases before training camp.
Yeah, man. You don't love it with Ricky Pearsall, who had the same sort of muted summer and spring last year after being drafted, right? And that's, I don't want to say it's a red flag, but it's just a little bit unfortunate. And it's one of those injuries that can nag. So basically they have to shut him down until camp. So It's not going to be a true full off season for Ricky Pearsall again, tweaking in his hamstring. So you don't love that, and you don't want that to be something that continues to dog him throughout his career, because it doesn't have to be a torn ACL. It doesn't. And we saw with Joey Bosa, you see it with a lot of players where it's just like, why is there always something with this guy? And there is a massive opportunity for Ricky Pearsall. And I just did somebody's podcast today, betcanada.com. We're talking, they were pumped about the Maple Missile, Curtis Rourke on the San Francisco 49ers. We're talking about Pearsall. Like, everyone's excited about Ricky Pearsall, what he can be. He has a huge opportunity with no Brandon Ayuk to start the year to just explode to start his second year. And we usually see those big jumps. Jacob Cowing, another guy with this huge opportunity. But you got to be on the field to be able to do it. And for some reasons, nowhere near his fault last season, he wasn't able to get on the field early. You don't want to see that happen again for Ricky Pearsall and have his camp and potentially his summer affected by nagging injuries that don't allow him to take off. Because with Ricky Pearsall, the talent is obviously was there enough for the 49ers to want to draft him in the first round. But I'm like, if you just break it down to its simplest form of playing wide receiver, what does a wide receiver need to do? Like, what's at the top of the resume? You need to be able to get open and you need to be able to catch the ball. He's got pure hands and he's got ridiculous quicks. He's going to be a good route runner in the NFL. He might not have the greatest play strength. He might not be amazing after the catch. He might not be a true downfield, nightmare of a weapon, but dude can get open and catch the football. And Kyle Shanahan can work with that, and he can move him around and keep him away from press coverage. And I think it'll be a nightmare on third downs, but you got to be healthy. So that's definitely something to monitor with Ricky Pearsall.
By the way, speaking about, you and I not speaking since the draft, kudos to you and I, because we're the only madmen who believed that Kyle Shanahan would draft Curtis Rourke.
I mean, how could you watch Curtis Rourke and not be like, that's a Kyle Shanahan quarterback if I've ever seen one? And you know what Kyle Shanahan loves in his quarterbacks is toughness. And this dude took a basketball school to the college football playoff. The Hoosiers in the college football playoff. And he had a torn ACL all season that I didn't even know about when I was watching him. Like, that's a Kyle Shanahan quarterback. And then not knowing he's playing on a torn ACL throughout that, sign Kyle Shanahan up for that. Kyle, sign me up for it. I think that was a phenomenal draft pick in the 7th round to get a guy who's even, I don't expect him to be the next Kirk Cousins or Mac Jones even. There's some similarities there to the way they play and their physical abilities. The next Brock Purdy, the next Tom Brady, whatever. Like, he doesn't have to be that. I just think he could be a really good backup quarterback. And he just fits what Kyle Shanahan does so well, being able to throw over the middle of the field, anticipation. And without the ACL, you go back and watch him pre-ACL, he can actually move around a little bit. He's not a complete statue back there, but he's a pocket passer, gets the ball out on time, gets the ball out with anticipation, throws the ball over the middle of the field. He's got a pretty nice arm too.
Yeah. Apologies to Tony Nagatoni, who, channel member and longtime supporter. The only 3 people who believed that Curtis Rourke was going to be drafted by the 49ers is you, I, and Tony. And you know what's funny is my father went to Indiana, and, obviously Indiana is the school that I root for with college basketball, not known for college football. But now there's 2 Indiana Hoosiers on the San Francisco 49ers. And you know what? Both of them make sense. So, I just again, we haven't spoken. But again, the only 2 madmen that were putting out like into the Twitter sphere and putting it out there were you and I. And you know what? It's nice to get one down. But you know what? Nobody had a better draft projection time than you did. No one. And I don't know if anyone has ever been able to nail that many picks in a row. And I like, no matter what happens with these players, to identify players that'll be under the eye of the 49ers. Like me, I'm still crying about Mykel Williams. And by the way, it's time to confirm your priors because it's OTAs and he's already doing very well with the Patriots. Thanks a lot. I wanted Jalen Noel. I wanted Jaden Higgins. None of those guys were there. The only one I got right was Curtis Rourke. Brian, you smashed this one. Forget a shadow draft. You hit the regular one.
It was pretty wild. The one that was really crazy for me, and look, it's pretty hard to say, I think they're going to draft X player in the 7th round. So the Curtis Rourke one, even though you could see some of the traits, that's kind of a big one. But Nick Martin, nobody was talking about Nick Martin, and it was pretty late in the process. I was watching these linebackers, and I was like, okay, because obviously they brought in a couple of players, and they brought in Chris Paul, who's 220 pounds. I was like, okay, but God, third round. He was in the mocks in the third round. I was like, man, I don't know if I like that, man. Maybe fifth round. Let's see where some of these guys are. And I was like, Nick Martin, fifth round, like combine numbers were good. I put on the tape and I was like, wait a second, dude. Why is nobody talking about this guy? Flies to the football. And it's like, dude, give me Nick Martin in the fifth round if you got to take Chris Paul in the third round all day long. And in the end, it was actually flipped, and Chris Paul ended up falling to the fifth round, and Nick Martin ends up going 75. I didn't think he'd go that high, but nobody had Nick Martin anywhere. And I don't know why he had no fans pre-draft. Now, still 75 shocked me, but I thought people were really sleeping on Nick Martin the more I watched him late in the process. And obviously the other Indiana guy in CJ West, probably two of my favorite picks were the two Indiana players. I mean, he's just a perfect fit. And it's nice that Robert Saleh came back and was like, well, wait a second. Why did you guys not draft a single nose tackle since I've been gone? So let's get like 650 pounds of beef and muscle in here to the interior of this defensive line to stop the run. So if there is anything that's going to be different about 49ers defense, and look, I think it's a little dubious to be starting that many rookies on defense. We're talking about 3, 4, 5 rookies that might start for the San Francisco 49ers week 1. And who knows, Siegel might have to play with all these injuries at safety too. That might not go great, but these dudes can stop the run. The Niners are going to be a better run defending team, even if there's 4 rookies starting on defense immediately.
Well, firstly, it's hard to be worse. So that's the way that I've been kind of pushing it in my Niners Nation articles is I know they're going to be improved because you can't be worse.
Yeah, they're not going to be worse. They got more physically talented guys than they had before, even if they're rookies and even if they're cheaper. And, you see some guys leave the building, and really the ones that hurt are Dre Greenlaw. Well, he didn't play at all. So if anybody can just be on the field, they'll be as valuable as Dre Greenlaw was last year, as awesome as Greenlaw is when healthy, like the Joey Bosa thing. Probably not smart money for the San Francisco 49ers. Oh, yeah, Greenlaw's already banged up again for the Denver Broncos. And then when you look at just the entirety of the players that they lost, like Collins, like Mykel Collins, fine player. He's all right. He's an NFL player. He's a pro. The 49ers going to miss him? No, absolutely not. Right. And, Charvarius Ward, they already drafted his replacement last year. So they got their starting corners. They're cool there.
Yeah, and that's what's funny. And going back to the Nick Martin thing is I wasn't well versed in him either, but I think I've found why nobody was really talking about him was because if he would have come out a year earlier, his stock would have been at an all-time high. When you throw that injury onto everything else is when everybody said, you know what, I can't. But you know what? Leave it to the 49ers to say, listen, this guy matches our identity. He matches the traits that we're looking for. Yes, he had an injury. That's fine. This isn't a Trent Baalke situation where they're just drafting guys with torn ACLs that nobody else wants to touch. He wasn't talked about because of that. But the little that he put on tape last season, when you go through it, you can see all those traits. I don't necessarily like the Dre Greenlaw 1-for-1 take. I think that that's a little bit off. I think if we're talking about play styles, I think that's where you can get me to understand, right? Plays with his hair on fire, sideline to sideline, maybe he'll overrun some tackles at a time, maybe have to control that aggression. That's Dre Greenlaw. But like the 1-for-1 stuff about like, oh, that's the next Dre Greenlaw, only in play style, I don't necessarily see either when I was watching them.
It's interesting because it's almost like, oh, we're just stupid fans and we're comparing these players to ex-49ers. But it's literally what the 49ers did. Like, they made those comparisons. They drafted Von Kinlaw in the second round in Alfred Collins. They drafted Dre Greenlaw's replacement in Nick Martin. They drafted K'Wan Williams. They drafted DJ Jones' replacement in CJ West. Like, they were telling us this. It wasn't like just us not having a reference to other players in the league. They literally did it, and they told us that's what they were doing.
And you know what's funny is I think that Robert Saleh realized the desperation of the 49ers to get him in the building. And part of his terms was, okay, I know you need me. You want me here. And you've dealt with Nick Sorensen and Steve Wilkes, and you've had, whatever results you've had. I'm going to build this shit from how I want to build it. And you're going to listen to me. And a lot of that had to do with it, I think. Obviously Saleh wanted to be back, but he realized it's like if you're dating a girl and the girl knows that, or the desperation that you have, or like to lock it in, then she knows she kind of has you, right? Like I can ask for more things, I can do a little bit more. It felt like Robert Saleh knew that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were like, please come back, and he was like, I already wanted to be here, but since you're asking, this is exactly what I want, and that's what this entire draft felt like.
I think the thing you worry about is it's kind of along the same lines of the Pearsall thing. So Pearsall dinged up again. You don't love to see that going into year 2. It's not a major injury, though. He should be all right, and hopefully it's not something that continues to happen with him, which would be unfortunate. But on the defensive side of the ball, and you look at Alfred Collins, who already can't practice, right? And you start thinking, well, okay, is he too similar to Javon Kinlaw, right? Like, let's see this guy on the field, and he's really big. And then then the next 2 picks were guys that were really small. And then those types of guys tend to get dinged up. And what happened with Nick Martin? He missed half the season. Upton Stout's been injured in his career. And you think, well, if you're undersized, there's a reason why those guys typically go a little bit later in the draft. And are they going to be up to the physical rigors of the NFL at that undersized, playing weight and playing strength, even though those guys play above their weight? You don't want to see them get hurt all the time. It's kind of like a running back on defense. When you're a little guy and you're playing in the trees, and we saw it with K'Wan Williams, you see it a lot when you're 180 pounds and 5'8.5", and you play the way Ups and South plays. I worry that he's going to have a long career, right? Because he's already had some injuries in college, and Nick Martin already had some injuries in college playing as a 220-pound linebacker. So those are some of the things you worry about when you look at the why should player X maybe go later traditionally, when you look at what the entire resume is for that player, whether you like him or not, whether he flies the football, whether he matches up your character and speed and play style evaluations and all of those things. And so you just don't want to see, as it was put in the chat a little bit earlier, the 49 IRs, right? You don't want to see that again. And you already see some young players that are already nicked up. And so just something to monitor. It's not a problem yet, but you don't want it to become a problem. And with the safeties, man, Yan brings up Hufanga. Like, okay, Malik Mustafa, awesome rookie last year. Okay, well, that's all right. They got some guys, and you can hold it down until he gets back. But the guy that's going to hold it down until he gets back is Jair Brown, and now he's hurt too, according to Kyle Shanahan.
Jair Brown out until training camp off of ankle surgery. Malik Mustafa, it goes from, he's going to be out for the rest of the season, half the season. We don't know, whatever. It's an ACL aggravation, whatever you want to call it. Even Marcus Siegel didn't practice, and he hasn't been practicing. He's dinged up. If you're starting to think about if there was a game on Sunday, you most likely would be running out your safeties as Jason Pinnock and Richie Grant, and that is a scary, scary situation. Now, let me throw some water on the panic fire. Thank God there's not a game on Sunday. Thank God that these guys are going to be back by training camp. But the safety position now, if Siegel's, not going now, and, Tig, who, let's be honest, has to really, really, really have a really good preseason, have a really good camp, and really show out to keep his status as someone running into this starting safety spot. To hear that after it was a time where we did the whole, like, hey, who's going to be in the best shape of their life? And someone brought up, I don't know how it's not going to be Jair Brown. And then literally right after that episode went off the air, Jair Brown's posting film clips of him locking up Devonta Smith in the slot and A.J. Brown one-on-one. And you're starting to think, okay, like, here it comes. It's tick season now, right? Like, and you know how it is, Brian. Any player that has any sort of play in any sort of OTA training camp, it's their season, right? I'm old enough to remember when Trent Sherfield was the new AB because he wore 81. I'm old enough to remember a lot of guys that were going to be those type of guys. But Siegel not being there now, Brown not being there, Malik not being there. All of these phases are, if you're learning math, addition is how you start, right? Then you move on to decimals, and then you move on to long division. All of these things are compounded one onto the other. And then when you throw in the fact that Robert Saleh, while he's going to be running the wide 9, is going to be adding his own playbook for all intents and purposes and be doing things completely different than Nick Sorensen is, you would like to see those guys being in there. It just sucks that we had this time in the offseason where, like, everything's moving in the right direction, and then you get here and you're like, well, Tig's not here, Mustafa's not here, Siegel's not here, and you're like, it throws a little water on the, on the flame. But like George Kittle said, the vibes are immaculate. I feel very good about where the team is right now.
Re-energized is the word that Brock Purdy used, and so you do like that. And there is in a minute I want to talk about like the most important part of camp and why that is. And I think Kittle, Warner, Brock Purdy represent that. But just real quick to finish up the defensive side of the ball and a little bit of post-draft stuff, Jason, since we haven't talked about that since, is the first rounder. Obviously, he's going to have to be good and be good right away in Mykel Williams out of Georgia. First time I watched him, I was like, okay, cool player. Is he a true pass rushing defensive end? And I was like, I don't know. Okay. And then kind of did all the other linemen. And then I went back and I watched him again. I was like, wait a second. There's a little bit more here. He just kind of wins every rep. And there might be more there as a pass rusher. And if the 49ers are better and you look at how good of a run defending defensive end he's going to be, he doesn't have to develop much to be that. I think with CJ West and Alfred Collins, they don't have to develop much to be good run defenders and be valuable rookies on early downs in the NFL, even if they have to, develop a little bit and worry about leverage, especially Collins, being high and being tall and worry about leverage against NFL players. But he was playing, some big time opponents there. They're going to be good run defenders. The 49ers are going to be a better run defending team. Those three players had 8 combined sacks last year in college. Like, you're projecting a lot for them to be better pass rushers in the NFL. I think it's easier to see with Mykel Williams. Mykel Williams talked about how Robert Saleh is going to unlock some of his pass rush ability because he's going to be allowed to be a little bit more relentless getting after the quarterback than he was. And he was very, very sound in his scheme in college, which I think, you see a lot of these players play a different role when they get to the NFL than they played on that Georgia defense. And Mykel Williams definitely be one of those, and he could still rush from inside as well. So I could see more pass rush production from him, but can the 49ers get off the field on third downs on defense? That will probably be the big thing to watch once the games start for me. And it's a little bit more difficult to project their pass defense and their third down defense versus how much better they should be on paper against the run this year.
I think there's no doubt, obviously, like I said, that they're going to be better against the run. I think, the idea of the wide nine is space eaters as the defensive tackles, one-on-ones for your edge guys, and those little crevices while they're holding up those blocks in the defensive tackles. You have your speedy, smaller linebackers get in there, and I think all of that makes perfect sense. I still think, Brian, this team is one situational pass rusher away from locking everything in. And I mean a veteran, I mean a ring chaser, I mean somebody who's going to come here for $1 million that, even might hold out as long as he can to like maybe just pull up a training camp. I'm fine with that. The name that keeps popping up in my head is Darius Smith. Obviously, Jadeveon Clowney's still out there. Obviously, even somebody like Von Miller. But it has to be somebody who is not going to be in there on base downs. And if you are going to be in obvious passing downs, then you have that situational pass rusher who is so experienced and is going to get those one-on-one looks, but you can move Mykel Williams inside so he can start to beat the slower guards in those ways. And I expect Robert Saleh to not just rush 4. I think that's what his plan was when he was here, when he was in 2019 and obviously in 2020. I think that's the plan, is that the idea of the scheme evolving on top of the fact that if you get the right personnel in here, you're just one situational pass rusher away from me really feeling really good about this defensive line. There's no doubt that they're going to be better on run defense because it can't be any worse. I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse, but that's just the fact of the matter. But at the same time, if you get yourself one of those guys on 3rd and 9, and how do you get to 3rd and 9? Stopping the run early on, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8. That's when you get your pass rushers. Or if it's 3rd and 11, you need a guy who's going to be able to win that way. Somebody who's not going to be on base downs and be fresh the entire time. They're just one situational pass rusher away from really, really unlocking this defensive line, in my opinion.
Cassius Marsh, still available, Jason. He's out there. The 49ers do need another situational pass rusher, and it's hard to beat out Cassius Marsh, as we know. Von Miller, like if you're going to splurge in a little bit of money here, and I don't think it will be crazy money. 1 year, it'll be a 1 year short term.
It's got to be a ring chaser.
The deal. Yeah. Von Miller, I would like that quite a bit. I think another pass rusher, and now another safety, potentially, if the 49ers are shopping before training camp. Because
Justin Blackman.
As awesome as the 49ers have been, and that's one of the stars I'll put on, like John Lynch is a Hall of Fame safety. He's got that position figured out. Everything they've done, whether they plugged somebody in who was a a low dollar free agent, a last minute addition in camp, a rookie thrown in. Like, it's always just worked at safety. So I kind of just like haven't worried about that position at all. But at some point, like, yeah, it's starting to get really thin there at safety. And some of these guys got to be on the field so they can play. And I like some of the young talent they have there. And Richie Grant can play. Like, Richie Grant can start. But then again, like, who's behind him even? And so it does start to worry you a little bit.
Well, and then I wonder if Justin Simmons is still out there. That's maybe something of an idea. But then the problem becomes Justin Simmons plays so well during this time while you're waiting. You know, do you want him to get in the way of that? And I think that's kind of the argument against Zadarius Smith, is the way that the 49ers are laying out the blueprint of following what the Rams did. And, you know, that 12-year-old who's now the general manager for the Jaguars, I just don't know his name. He just looks like a kid. But he did really put out a good statement saying, we intentionally didn't bring in any veterans because we wanted our rookies to play. So I wonder if the 49ers are lifting that blueprint all the way in that way. For me, when you look at them lowering their cap with the Fred Warner move, them rolling that cap over, that's fine. I wonder if it means a move now or a move at the deadline if the team is moving in the right direction. That the good news is they have the flexibility to do that, but I just wonder if the philosophy of letting the kids play is going to stop them from calling Zadarius Smith or Von Miller or, you know, Jadeveon Clowney, who, you know, by the way, Jadeveon Clowney is probably a better run defender at this time, which is it feels like a redundant skill set. I don't want Jadeveon Clowney. If I was picking, it's between Zadarius Smith and Von Miller. It's between those two because Zadarius Smith did so well when he all of a sudden had something to play for. When he went to the Lions, he like doubled his pressure numbers and he was filling in for Aiden Hutchinson. But Jadeveon Clowney, adding him, yeah, he's younger, but he's a run defender. You're getting in the way of Mykel Williams. And if you're doing that, I'd like to see Mykel Williams in there on first and second downs. I don't need to see Clowney in there on first and second downs. I'm good on that.
I'm totally with you on that one. By the way, Joey Gladstone, is that the GM or is that the guy? Or is that the character from Full House, or the GM from the Jaguars? Something like
sure, why not?
It's Joey Gladstone. That's the name that's popping in my head right now. Pretty sure it's Gladstone. By the way, that dude, yeah, he's pretty young. He's like 35. I'm not gonna call him a kid, but
he looks like a kid.
He's patting himself on the back pretty hard after day one of the NFL draft. He's made one draft pick, trading future draft picks to go up and get a guy who still needs some work in the NFL, as talented as he is in Travis Hunter. And he was so excited about himself and patting himself on the back for that. I was like, hey, careful, man. The draft has a way of biting you in the ass. So don't get a little too ahead of yourself. You made one pick. Good job, dude.
Don't touch the money too early.
Yeah.
But I would rather that the general manager that just sent all that is very happy with what he said. Like, so I guess I'd rather he be like that than like, yeah, you know, whatever, we got Travis Hunter. Like, you know what, you know, like, but, you know, don't count your chickens and all of those things. Whatever, you know, whatever. What is it? Whatever analogy my dad would give, you know, one of those or whatever. What is it? That and $1.50 gets you on the train? Like, my dad would say something like that or whatever. I'm just like, whatever, man.
Who's your legend?
Yeah, but yeah, hey, you know what? I let him know. I'm like, hey, there's 2 Hoosiers on Indiana. He was like, I don't give a shit about college football. I was like, that's crazy. I was like, that's insane. They're actually really good now.
That's how little of a football school it is, and they were in the college football tournament. Unbelievable.
He's crying about Mike Woodson getting fired as the Indiana Hoosiers coach, and I'm like, dog, they weren't good at all. I was like, the Hoosiers were in the college football playoffs. That's really cool.
But as far as the safety goes, like, you're not blocking anybody. Malik Mustafa is going to be the strong safety when he comes back. Sign a guy who can play free safety now and you're good. So I'm not too worried about that. And I'm with you, man. Von Miller would be a really nice fit. Niners have a lot of space under the cap, but as we know, they like to roll a lot of that cap space over. So it's not like they're going to spend all that cap space. And you know, they spent a lot of cash already this offseason, which is sort of a segue to the next thing I want to talk about here. And the most important thing the 49ers could do this spring, they've already done it. And I think that's really the big takeaway I have about where the San Francisco 49ers are right now, today. I know some of these, you know, guys that might not be practicing in OTAs, minor injuries, a lot of them might be playing if it was a real game. You know, you got to get your guys to camp first. So, you know, nothing really too wild there. But the Brock Purdy deal, and I got to give the 49ers credit here. They heard our pleas for the last, I don't know how many off seasons are like, guys, do you have to wait this long to do every single stinking deal that you do? It's hurting your football team, and you're not saving a dime by doing it. So get the deals done, right? And they finally did it. And I think you have to credit Brock Purdy, and you have to credit George Kittle, and you have to credit Fred Warner. These are probably the three biggest leaders right now on the football team. And it takes two to tango, and both sides got these deals done before OTAs. So there is no cloud this year hanging over the 49ers in camp with holdouts and all of these things. I think it was really important to get done. So kudos to the Niners for figuring out finally and getting these deals done early. And the players themselves had to be motivated to get the deals done early as well. And they did. And maybe they took $1 less to get those deals done now. But I just think it just shows the leadership. I think it was really important. I think it's the most important thing the 49ers could have done between the draft and training camp was get those deals done. And they did. And so they've done the most important thing they could do in the spring, OTAs aside.
I think a few things can be true. Is Fred Warner, when he went to the podium and he came up, he's like, look, I've made a lot of money. I know everything's going to work out. I think we based what we knew about Brock Purdy off of what we've seen and never really thought that he was going to be somebody who was going to be a holdout guy or anything like that, or, just give me what I need. When I spoke to it's so crazy. When I spoke to his offensive coordinator, who wasn't the offensive coordinator when he was there, by the way, at Iowa State, it's funny that he brought up all he wants to do is go fish. And when someone asked him what's the biggest thing he's going to purchase, he said a fishing boat. And he said if there was anything that's in the way, it's not Brock, because he's going to take whatever. And then with Kittle, that's a no-brainer, right? Like to give him the most money. But I also think it's a sign of the 49ers understanding that we cannot mess around this offseason. Everybody needs to be ready to go right away because we have no excuses. And there cannot be a time period where we're in week 3, 4, like, well, they'll figure it out. They're trying to get back into the flow. No. Everyone is locked in from here all the way to here, and we're starting early. So I think the 49ers, while we're looking at them and saying, hey, you got it done, I think it's because they feel the pressure. They feel that they know that they can't start this season, especially with this schedule, 1-2, 2-2, and everyone's just saying, hey, well, they'll dig themselves out of it. No, they know they need to get out of the gate 3-1, 4-0, and they need to get rolling. And the only way to do that is to get all this stuff done and move in this right direction. And I think that's really what motivated a lot of this.
What do you think about the Trent Williams situation? It's not really a situation. If there's one guy that doesn't need to be around early, and certainly a guy that you don't want to get himself hurt before the season starts, and he's going to miss a couple of games as it is future Hall of Famer Trent Williams. Kyle Shanahan was asked about Trent Williams not being around, and he said, well, he's been around. He was here at the beginning of phase 1. He hasn't been here for a couple of weeks, but I expect to see him soon. What do you think about the way Kyle phrased that and Trent Williams right now, and how long can we expect Trent Williams to be around? And that was the one thing the 49ers didn't do in the draft, the thing they didn't do last year either, or the year before that, is figure out who's going to be a future offensive tackle for this team.
So I think Trent has just earned himself, like, please just get here, right? Like, just get here when you need to get here, right? Also put Trent in a big bubble and get him here, to week 1. He's the one that I would feel the least worried about if he didn't have any preseason, anything like that, to play week 1. But I do think my tinfoil hat, right? Let's put it on real quick. I do think that the 49ers were unsure early on about what was going on with Trent, which is why you heard about DJ Humphries, and you see Andre Dillard, and you see the other guy from Tennessee, and then all of a sudden DJ Humphries doesn't have a deal. My tinfoil hat was they didn't know what was about to happen. And then Trent was like, nah, I'm coming back. And they say, you know what, Humphries, no deal. Get out. Right. And that's just again, could be completely wrong. Absolutely just thinking about it. But again, this feels like the last hurrah for Trent. And if I think he's earned himself enough where no one in that locker room is going to question him. Nobody outside of that locker room is going to question him because of how good he is, even still. But I think you are right. Like, he is going to miss some games, and it's, kind of just the way that it's been. But you know what? I'm not worried about the Trent thing at all. Just please, like, I would love for there to be a press conference where it's just like, Trent's gonna be here. He's definitely not retiring, but I think they get the sense of that. And then I think again, that's what the DJ Humphries thing kind of told me is they were trying to brace for it, and he was just like, no, I'm coming back. And they were like, all right, get out, Humphries, like get back out on the street.
Wow. I think they need DJ Humphries with Trent Williams, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
How many, if Trent Williams, look, he misses a couple games every year, even when he's healthy. I don't want to see Andre Dillard out there for those few games. It's like there's
Spencer Burford.
I'd probably say give Burford a shot if anybody.
I think Burford's the backup left tackle right now, and I think they're fine with that.
But then you're a little light on the interior guys in the backups in the interior as well. So like depth is an issue right now on the offensive line for the 49ers. To be honest with you, Colton McKivitz, who's been everyone's favorite whipping boy amongst 49ers fans in recent years, he was the least of their problems last year. He was fine at right tackle, right?
He was probably the second best offensive
lineman on the team.
He's going to get paid so much money, and I cannot wait for 49er fans to react to this. Like, it's going to be hilarious how much money he's going to make.
But not by the 49ers, right? So here's the thing is, do you show up next April and the 49ers have to do the thing on the offensive line that they did this year on defense? They're like, well, we have to draft a tackle, and you better be able to start. Oh, guess what? We got to draft another tackle, and we got to draft a guard. They're going to need 3/5 of their offensive line starters. Pooney at right tackle, potentially. I see Pooney at left tackle in the draft or in the chat here. I've been kind of projecting him to maybe be a future right tackle, but then you still need a lot of depth and a lot of replacements on the inside too, because you're just shuffling chairs there, and you still need an extra starter, even if Pooney moves over to right tackle next year to replace Colton McKivitz. And I agree with you. Colton McKivitz, starting offensive tackle, is going to make some money next offseason, whether it's with the 49ers and probably with somebody else.
So I think the left tackle thing is still up in the air, like for next season we're talking about. But if we're talking about the depth on the interior, I think Connor Colby is absolutely in the mix to be one of those guys. You still have Matt Hennessy on the roster behind Jake Brendel. No matter what you think about Jake Brendel is going to start week 1, come hell or high water, unless he just has an awful training camp. It's just how they're going to roll. I think they're comfortable with what they have, and they're fine with kicking Burford out there to left tackle. Will that work? I don't know. But next year presents that, because Colton McKivitz is going to get a big bag, and then people are going to say, wow, you overpaid. No. Breathing, starting tackles with a pulse who actually are alive, they get paid a lot of money because of how scarce the position is. So he's going to get paid. The 49ers won't pay him, and it's the same thing that they did with Aaron Banks, who they drafted both of them. By the way, 2000 draft, you walk away with Brandon Ayuk, you get Trent Williams, you draft Colton McKivitz. I mean, you took Javon Kinlaw, but you ended up with some cornerstone, guys that are going to end up playing for you, like in that draft when I was going through it, because I'm about to write an article about the full results of the Trent Williams class. But again, it's the problem is the Jake Brendel thing can't keep going on, right? Like, I think they're going to run him out there again, but I don't think you can run him out there next season unless there's some sort of epiphany or like breakthrough, right? Like, I think he's fine, but he's gotten worse each year. I think we can all admit that. So I do think that there is this little bit of time where, after this year, Trent retires, Colton moves on. You got to figure out where Pooney is, because he's one of the 5. And you're kind of just shuffling around with guys who have either never played or just brand new rookies. Like, it's going to be a little bit scary next season.
One last thing before we go, Jason, I want to talk about the wide receivers just for a minute, one more time. And out there at practice, Juwan Jennings, Demarcus Robinson, and Jacob Cowing were the top 3 wideouts, with Ricky Pearsall not on the field due to his hamstring, and Brandon Ayuk still coming back from his ACL injury. And according to Matt Barrows, Brock Purdy looked sharp, especially on throws to Juwan Jennings. So that's a good thing. I think we know exactly what that connection is going to look like. You hope that's not the number 1 connection out there for the 49ers this year with other injuries. But the Demarcus and Jacob Cowing, it's nice that he's showing up early. He's got a little bit more weight. I think it's for wide receivers, especially, I think year 2 is so huge. And it's just so hard for rookie wide receivers to come in, especially in Kyle Shanahan's offense, and avoid the doghouse and really ingratiate themselves to the team and really prove that they deserve to be on the field. So year 2 is massive here. So I can't wait to see what Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall, both rookies from last year, look like out there. But the Demarcus Robinson signing is weird, because what they needed was a guy who was going to be there for the first 3 weeks, and that's the time when Demarcus Robinson is is suspended. Like it's almost as if they didn't know about the suspension when they signed him, because that puzzle piece doesn't quite fit, because it's nice to have him back in week 4 or whatever, but that's when you're kind of hoping you're going to have Brandon Ayuk back pretty soon. So it's weird, because you sign a veteran. It's now like, oh, well, now we need a veteran to fill the gap of the other veteran when he's not going to be there for the first 3 weeks. So the Demarcus Robinson thing, even though the fit I think would be perfect, suspension aside, with the suspension makes a lot less sense to me and how he fits with the 49ers, because now he's like the 4th, 5th wide receiver with everybody back healthy midseason.
Yeah, it's nice depth, but again, you're talking about what you were preparing for, because it seems like Brandon Ayuk, if we're going off of what Matt Mayoko said, I believe on Rich Eisen, was he expects the first 4 weeks, and I think that's best case scenario considering the ACL and MCL, right? So that's a good thing. This is why I kept yelling about Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore's 25 years old, 1 year, $4 million is what he got from the Buffalo Bills. He plays the slot. Juwan Jennings plays the X, and you use Pearsall and whoever it is else on the other side. You don't run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. That's fine, but it's still you unlocking a guy who is still very young and still a very good route runner. The Demarcus Robinson thing, as soon as he was signed, was like, wait a minute, he has a suspension on the way. We all knew about the DUI because it happened during their playoff run with the Rams, and we were all joking, like, get him off the field, that guy, but now you may have to go to the well, and the problem is the well is Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, and those guys are not going to take a reduced role when Brandon Ayuk comes back. So who is it, right? Like you're going to have to start going into who you have, and the name that you keep coming up with is Jacob Cowing. This has to be Jacob Cowing's time. It's all in front of you right now. Again, this year I didn't hit on many draft picks. Last year, I hit on that one, and I hit on Isaac Guerrero, because I felt like those are the guys, if we're talking about what the 49ers were worried about after that Super Bowl, right? It was separation and speed. Okay, well, Jacob Cowing has speed. He's a separator. He's a great route runner. He's actually tough over the middle. Maybe use that guy. Maybe get him on the field more than 10, 11 snaps. I understand why you didn't last year, and everybody can make whatever assumption, because everyone knows, he didn't know the playbook. We don't know why he wasn't on there, but we know that Kyle Shanahan prefers Chris Conley because Chris Conley knows where he's going to be, and I need that reliability. This has to be Jacob Cowing's time right now. This is his opportunity. The door is wide open for him to run through. I still believe in the young man. I think he's a phenomenal route runner. I think he is going to unlock another dimension to this offense, not somebody who can just run straight 9 routes, somebody who is an underrated route runner, can run blaze outs. The last 49ers wide receiver, the last Kyle Shanahan wide receiver besides Brandon Ayuk that could run those blaze out routes was a guy named Julio Jones. And I still think that Jacob Cowing, while I'm not saying he's Julio Jones, he's capable of running those routes. But again, the 49ers need him. And now, if he's beefed up in the best shape of his life, this is your opportunity, dude. And I think this is where we're going to find out a lot about him, as he's been working out with Brock Purdy and he's been doing all this work.
Brian in the chat says, miss your videos, BP. Hey, you can still find all kinds of videos of me Locked On 49ers, Peacock and Williamson show every single day. But I appreciate you guys hanging out here on Overtime with Brian Peacock, OT with BP, PEACONTE season. You're going to see a lot more of these videos. And Jason, always nice chatting with you. Glad we're back in the saddle here. And let the folks know where they can find all of your stuff before we go.
Yeah, NinersNation.com. Again, I just write for them. I didn't come up with the name, so don't yell at me. But yeah, there's gonna be an article tomorrow morning, like recounting the Trent Williams trade. Put up 2 articles today. Apparently, Brian, PFF believes that Fred Warner and George Kittle are the best of their positions. I think we would all agree about that. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And where the 49ers rank as a roster, last season PFF had them at number 1. Where do you think they have them at this time? But you can check all that out on Niners Nation. And just like and subscribe to the video on both channels as well. A like helps so much. If you're here on either channel, a like it goes a long way and helps us with this crazy algorithm that YouTube has going on right now.
Yeah. Thumbs up, subscribe, notification bell, all those things for the algo. Get us going on the algo here. Brian Peacock and Jason Aponte. We are out. Talk to you next time right here. OT with BP and a lot of times Aponte.